You've done everything right, and still the silence lingers. It is not punishment, but migration, a season inside you that disagrees with the clock. The mask you wore for safety loosens. The voice you abandoned begins to return. Fear shows itself as a shadow on the wall, but when you look directly, it fades. This is not collapse, but shedding, the chrysalis breaking, the river remembering your name. You are not becoming someone else. You are ceasing to be smaller than you are. The quiet summons. You've done everything they asked. You carried the mask, kept the rhythm, lived the script. And still, something aches, subtle as a whisper in the hollow of your chest. You cannot name it, but you feel it, a quiet summons, like a knock from the inside of a locked door. You wake, but it doesn't feel like your life. The room is familiar, yet your soul feels like a guest. Notice how this found you. Not random scrolling, not distraction. It arrived like a message slipped under your door at the exact hour you were finally ready to read. Your breath shifts without permission. The air gathers. The moment presses close, as if the unseen itself were leaning toward you. Some part of you knows, this isn't content. This is a mirror. The mind will tell you it is coincidence, but the body knows otherwise. The tingling along your skin, the pulse in your sternum, the way your eyes linger here longer than they planned. These are signals. Archetypes move through symbols, and symbols move through sensation. What you feel now is the self stirring, reminding you of a home you once abandoned for survival. There is an ancient field beneath your surface life, the place where your shadow hides and your forgotten dreams sleep. Jung said the soul leaves clues in darkness, small fires at the edges of the forest. Perhaps you've seen them, numbers repeating until you finally stopped ignoring them, dreams more vivid than daylight, uncanny conversations that seem to carry secret instructions. You dismissed them as accidents, yet they kept following you, like a hound that refuses to lose your scent. This is not the first time you've been called. It is the first time you've stayed. Something in you, tired of rehearsing, tired of pretending, refused to look away this time. You feel the mask slipping. You sense the persona cannot hold the weight of your unlived life much longer. And here, in the stillness between inhale and exhale, you glimpse what you've always suspected. There is more of you than the story you've been living. It doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes quietly, like water seeping through stone. But you can feel it changing you even now. The way rivers carve valleys, the way silence rearranges a crowded room. The choice before you is not whether you will change. You already are. The choice is whether you will follow this current or resist it, clinging to shores that no longer exist. This is your summons, the first doorway, a chance not to consume meaning, but to remember that you are meaning, to stop seeking the signal and recognize that you are the signal, to admit that what you've been searching for has been searching for you all along. Where on this inner path do you find yourself now? The hidden architecture of reality. You were taught that reality is what you can touch, measure, prove. But the longer you live, the more you notice the seams, the way a thought lingers in the room after it's spoken, the way a mood colors the light, the way one decision, made quietly, rearranges the furniture of your days. You begin to suspect there is scaffolding beneath the visible world, a lattice that responds not to argument, but to attention. You feel it as a pressure when you're out of alignment, as relief when your words match your blood. You have seen how one person's steadiness calms a quarrel, how another's hunger pulls the energy of a room into itself. These are not fantasies. They are the tremors of the hidden architecture your soul has always known. You notice it first in your breath. When you gather your awareness, the field around you gathers too, like iron filings drawn to a magnet. When you scatter, so does the day. This is the original grammar, where attention rests, reality congeals. The self understands this, though the persona resists. The persona wants proofs and guarantees. The self wants fidelity. The old teachers told it in stories, prophets and poets, monks and mothers, hinting that the world is porous to the heart that is undivided. Jung would call this the movement toward wholeness. Not an idea you entertain, but a frequency you inhabit until it becomes the tone by which your life is tuned. You are not merely consuming this moment, you are shaping it. Your presence is not neutral. Every time you return to your breath, you choose which river you are willing to feed. Every feeling you allow to ripen into action becomes a signature you broadcast. Fear with its barbed edge, gratitude with its soft radiance, grief with its dark and honest gravity that clears the air for truth. You have felt yourself magnetize opportunity when your interior is coherent. You have also watched doors close when you move from contraction, even if your words are golden. The field listens past your declarations to the timbre beneath them. It answers not what you say you want, but what you embody is real. This is why not all wishing works. You can ache for abundance and still leak scarcity through your posture. You can pray for love and still abandon yourself whenever belonging asks for boundaries. The world is not punishing you, it is mirroring you. Like a lake, it returns the sky it's given. When you are storm, you see storms. When you are clear, horizons appear that seemed impossible just hours before. The discipline here is tender, not severe, to hold yourself the way you wish the world would hold you, and to do it long enough that your nervous system begins to trust that you mean it. Something else happens when you linger in coherence. Chance rearranges itself. The email arrives the hour your resolve stops wavering. The friend calls it the very sentence you needed to say out loud. A book falls open to a line that feels as if the page had been waiting for you since it was printed. Most people treat these moments like confetti, pretty, then gone. You are learning to treat them like coordinates. The psyche speaks in images and timing. Synchronicity is its courier. When you stop treating it as entertainment and begin receiving it as instruction, a map emerges from the mist. Part of you doubts this. It should. Doubt is the mind's way of not letting you drown in wishful thinking. But doubt need not be your governor. It can become your gatekeeper. Let it ask its necessary questions. Then let your body answer. The body is old in ways your intellect is not. Feel how your chest loosens when a path is right, how your jaw tightens when a choice betrays you, how your shoulders lower when you finally speak the sentence you've been avoiding. Your organism is an instrument built to detect the harmonies and dissonances of the unseen. Practice is simply learning to trust its music. There is talk, in modern language, of fields and signals, of brain rhythms and heart rhythms, of coherence and entropy. You don't need the lab to know the living truth. When your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions agree, life moves with you. When they argue, life delays. This alignment is not a performance you stage. It is a devotion you keep. You keep it in the small places. How you close a door, how you sign your name, how you speak of those who cannot hear you. Nothing you do is without echo. That is not a reason for fear. It is a reason for tenderness. Why does this matter now? Because something in you has ripened. The old strategy, collecting signs but refusing to live them, has become too expensive. You feel the cost in your sleep, your appetite, the way your laughter has been thinner lately. You sense a window, not because a date has been stamped upon your life, but because your soul has completed a private orbit and the gate has swung into view. Windows do not threaten, they beckon. They are invitations to step from theory into vow. A vow is different from a plan. A plan calculates. A vow consecrates. When you vow to live from your center, you will find the world rearranging, not instantly, but intimately. Some relationships will quiet, others will kindle. Work that once drained you will either ask to be done differently or show you the door with a strange kindness. Even your house will feel new in places. A corner of light you never noticed, a chair that suddenly becomes a sanctuary, a threshold that prompts you to breathe before you cross it. You begin to see that the field is conversational, and that you have always been speaking to it with your posture, your choices, your refusals, your care. There is a humility required here, to stop insisting that reality bend to your timeline and to start aligning with the deeper tempo that has been trying to reach you. Rivers do not rush at the shore. They surrender to the shape of the valley, and in that surrender they carve stone. You do not bully life into blessing, you agree with it. Agreement is not passivity. It is a fierce, listening consent. It is the courage to stop bargaining with your own knowing. If you are waiting for perfect confidence, you will never move. Faith rarely arrives as a banquet. It arrives as a crust of bread and the next right step. Take it, and the path lengthens. Take it again, and the fog lifts just enough to keep you honest. The self is not asking for spectacle. It is asking for fidelity, for you to keep turning your face toward what is true even when no one is clapping. Especially then. You begin to recognize how your life participates in the larger life, how your coherence steadies a room, how your honesty permits honesty in others, how your refusal to abandon yourself becomes a small lighthouse someone else will one day steer by. This is not grandiosity, it is ecology. Souls are mycelial. We feed each other beneath the surface where eyes cannot see. When you live aligned, the forest you cannot name grows healthier. So you ask, here and now, a simpler question than you used to ask. Not, how do I make life give me what I want? But what wants to move through me if I stop resisting? And when you ask it sincerely, you feel the quiet click of an inner lock releasing. The room is the same. You are not. The hidden architecture glimmers in the ordinary. The day begins. Which truth in this story touched your soul the most? The guardian at the threshold. You have felt it already, the resistance. That inner recoil that rises just when the path starts to open. The whisper that says, not you, not now, not this way. It feels like fear, but it is older than fear. It is the guardian. Every true passage has one. The ancients understood this. In every myth, the hero meets a monster at the edge of the forest, a dragon at the mouth of the cave, a sphinx at the gate. The form changes, but the meaning does not. Before you can step into the larger room of your being, you must prove you are willing to leave the smaller one behind. The guardian is not your enemy. It is the test. In Jung's language, this guardian is the shadow. All that you buried to survive, your unwept grief, your unspoken anger, your unclaimed desire, waits at the threshold. It does not bar you from crossing. It asks only this: will you see me, or will you keep pretending I am not you? Until you answer, the door stays closed, not from cruelty, but from protection. For no one can carry unlived fragments into the temple of the self without shattering the vessel. You recognize the shadow in its disguises. It comes as doubt, as procrastination, as the sudden need to tidy the room when it is time to write the truth. It comes as the voice that compares you to everyone else and finds you lacking. It comes as the ache to return to familiar cages because at least they are safe. These are not random saboteurs. They are masks worn by the guardian, pressing you to turn inward instead of outward, to claim the parts of you that you swore were too much or not enough. And yet, something in you resists this seeing, because to face the shadow is to admit you have been more than your mask all along. It is to admit the life you have been living is smaller than the one that waits. That realization is not gentle. It burns, but it is holy fire. Without it, you would drag old costumes into new landscapes, forever mistaking disguise for destiny. The threshold is narrow. You cannot walk through it carrying every identity you have borrowed. The critic, the pleaser, the dutiful child, they cannot cross. They wait at the door, hoping you will turn back, for their survival depends on your hesitation. But you are learning to bow to them without obeying, to thank them for keeping you safe, then leave them where they belong, as chapters, not as authors, of your becoming. This is why the path feels both terrifying and familiar. The terror belongs to the persona, who fears its own obsolescence. The familiarity belongs to the soul, who has been here before. You stand between them, trembling, as all initiates do. The guardian growls, but you begin to notice. Its teeth are carved of smoke. When you look with clear eyes, you see it has only as much power as you give it. Do not mistake me. Crossing is not comfortable. You may lose relationships built on your smaller self. You may feel loneliness as the scaffolding of old identity crumbles. You may even long to return to the sleep you once cursed. But the threshold is not a punishment. It is a passage. Every death of a role makes space for a birth of reality. The shadow asks, can you befriend what you once rejected? Can you hold the anger without becoming cruel, the grief without drowning, the desire without shame? If you can, the guardian bows. If you cannot, it waits with patience, for the self does not rush. Time itself bends around the soul's insistence. So when resistance comes, when your own voice whispers that you are not ready, pause. Do not fight it. Listen. Ask the shadow what it wants you to know. Ask the fear what it is trying to protect. In the silence that follows, you may hear something astonishing. The guardian was never trying to block you. It was trying to guide you toward the hidden key. And the key, always, is your own willingness to see yourself whole. Stand at this threshold long enough, and you feel the shift. The door is not locked. It never was. It only waited for you to knock from the inside. What part of your shadow is quietly asking to be seen? The language of synchronicity. There are moments you cannot explain. A number repeats until you can't ignore it. A stranger says the exact words you were aching to hear. A dream feels more real than morning. Its images clinging to your skin like dew. These are not ornaments of chance. They are a language, subtle and insistent, spoken by the self when ordinary speech fails. Jung called it synchronicity, the meeting of inner state and outer event in a way too precise to be dismissed as accident. To the rational mind, it feels irrational. To the soul, it feels inevitable. You've lived these alignments before. The song that played when your heart cracked open. The book that slid from the shelf at the exact chapter you needed. The timing of a friend's call just as you were deciding whether to stay or to leave. They were not coincidences. They were breadcrumbs scattered by the deeper intelligence of your being, guiding you back to the path you promised before you forgot. The difficulty is not receiving the signs. It is honoring them. Most people treat synchronicity like magic tricks. Delightful, then disposable. They marvel, but do not act. They smile at the uncanny timing, then return to the same old patterns. But synchronicity is not entertainment. It is instruction. Each one is a door. You either walk through, or you turn away and pretend you didn't hear the knock. The psyche will not punish you for turning away. It will wait. But the waiting has a cost. Each time you dismiss the signs, the voice of your own knowing grows quieter. You begin to doubt not just the world but yourself. You call it bad luck, but it is simply the consequence of refusing your invitations. The universe does not shout. It whispers until you remember how to lean close. Notice how your dreams have been changing. The imagery grows sharper, layered with symbols that seem foreign but stir a familiarity you cannot explain. A forest at night, a child by a river, a house with endless rooms. These are not meaningless scraps of imagination. They are archetypal maps, sketches from the unconscious showing you where you are and what waits to be faced. The dream is a rehearsal, a myth unfolding inside you so that waking life can catch up. And then there are the numbers. 1111 glowing on a clock. A date repeating until it feels like it is following you. You tell yourself it's coincidence, but part of you knows. Numbers are the oldest alphabet of the cosmos. They are not predicting your future. They are marking your present. They are signals that you are aligned with the pattern beneath the surface. You are being reminded. You are seen. You are not wandering at random. Synchronicity dissolves the illusion of separation. It shows you that the inner and the outer are woven from the same thread. When you grieve, the sky mirrors you with rain. When you rejoice, the city hums in harmony. It is not that the world bends to your mood. It is that you and the world are not two. You are a single movement of consciousness, dreaming itself in different disguises. But here lies the challenge. Synchronicities intensify as you near the center. At first they thrill you, then they unsettle you, then they demand something of you. Each one carries a task. Will you answer? Will you step into the unknown when the sign points the way? Or will you nod politely and retreat into the comfort of what you already know? The choice is yours. The invitation is constant. The old self wants proof before it moves. The self knows movement is the proof. That is why signs feel both fragile and undeniable. They do not coerce. They invite. They say, trust the river. Step where the stones appear. You do not need the whole bridge to take the next stride. So you learn to listen differently, not with the mind that demands certainty, but with the heart that recognizes resonance. You start treating chance as conversation, treating the dream as scripture, treating the subtle repetition as choreography. Life begins to feel less like a puzzle to solve and more like a symphony to follow. You become fluent in the pauses, the echoes, the improbable timing. And when you honor the signs, they multiply. Doors open, encounters align, guidance flows with startling clarity. You realize you were never alone in the labyrinth. The self has been leaving lanterns all along, waiting for you to notice their glow. Let your voice be heard. Someone else might need to read it. Shedding old skins. There comes a moment when the familiar begins to feel foreign. The job that once felt secure now tastes of dust. Conversations skim shallow surfaces, leaving you emptier than before. Even the mirror reflects not your face, but a mask you've outworn. It is not failure. It is shedding. Just as a snake must release the skin that once protected it, you too are called to release identities, relationships, and structures that no longer breathe with your soul. This unraveling is not gentle. At first, you resist. You clutch at old roles, hoping to stretch them wider, to make them fit again. But the more you grip, the more they disintegrate. What you once called stability now feels like confinement. What you once thought was love now feels like bargaining. What you once named success now feels like exile from yourself. The truth is undeniable. You cannot remain who you were and become who you are. Jung understood this as individuation, the long and difficult birth of the self. Not a rejection of the past, but its composting. The persona, crafted carefully for approval, begins to crack. The shadow, long denied, slips through the fractures. You are not losing yourself. You are gaining back what you abandoned. The fragments you hid to belong return now, asking to be included in the wholeness you once feared to carry. It can feel like betrayal of those who knew you as smaller, safer, more convenient. But it is not betrayal, it is fidelity to your soul. Some relationships cannot follow you across this threshold. They depended on your silence, your self-abandonment, your willingness to live as half of yourself. When you begin to speak with your full voice, the scaffolding of those dynamics collapses. You mourn them, even as you breathe freer without them. The work you once accepted for survival may begin to crumble, too. What fed your body starved your spirit. What praised your diligence ignored your essence. When the self awakens, the currency shifts. Security bought at the cost of your soul is no longer negotiable. The psyche rebels, refusing to pour its fire into vessels that dishonor its flame. It may feel like loss, but it is reclamation. You are no longer willing to pay with your life for the illusion of safety. This shedding strips you bare. It leaves you tender, unsure, unguarded. But in that bareness, something astonishing happens. Light touches places that have been covered for years. Breath fills rooms within you that had been locked. Joy, fragile but honest, flickers at the edges of grief. You begin to see that endings are not erasures. They are initiations. What dissolves makes space for what is truer. Nature has always known this. Trees let go of their leaves without bargaining. Caterpillars dissolve into formlessness before wings arrive. Even stars collapse before they shine as novas. Why should your soul be any different? You are part of the same rhythm. Death as doorway, dissolution as promise. Do not fear the emptiness between skins. The old is gone, and the new has not yet arrived. It feels like exile, but it is gestation. This is the chrysalis stage, where identity liquefies so essence can reassemble. It is not weakness to be undone. It is the only way to be remade. So let the skin fall. Let the rolls drop. Let the scaffolding collapse. Each surrender is a prayer, each release a vow. Trust that what leaves is clearing the ground for what was always meant to grow. You are not losing your life. You are stepping into it. Where on this inner path do you find yourself now? Embodiment and heart coherence. Recognition alone is not enough. Awakening is not a spark you keep in your pocket. It is a fire that must be lived. To know you are more than the mask is the first step. To embody it, to walk, breathe, and speak from that knowing, is the passage itself. Most people linger at the threshold, fascinated by insight, yet unwilling to be rearranged by it. They read the signs, dream the dreams, feel the call, and then wait for life to prove it safe before they commit. But the soul does not barter in that currency. The field does not respond to what you say you believe. It responds to what you embody as true. You can whisper affirmations of abundance and still carry the posture of scarcity. You can pray for love and still flinch when tenderness draws near. Until your breath, your body, and your choices align with your knowing, the universe mirrors back your hesitation. The heart is the axis of this embodiment. Science tells you it radiates a field 60 times stronger than the brain. Mystics knew it long before. The heart is not simply an organ, it is a compass. When its rhythms are coherent, when gratitude, compassion, or devotion steady its beat, the field around you harmonizes. You become less a beggar of life and more a tuning fork, calling reality into resonance with your state of being. Try to recall a moment of coherence, when you stood in awe before the sea, or laughed so wholly your ribs ached, or held someone in silence and knew words were unnecessary. In those moments, life bent around you. Strangers softened. Time loosened. Possibilities appeared as if by accident, though it was not accident at all. It was alignment. Embodiment asks you to live from that place not as an exception, but as your baseline. It requires practice, devotion, return. Not perfection, return. Each time fear contracts you, you breathe and return. Each time anger floods you, you pause and return. Each time doubt whispers, you think it and return. Slowly, coherence becomes not a peak state, but your ordinary gravity. And as it stabilizes, the field responds. Encounters align. Conversations deepen. What once felt out of reach begins to orbit near. The shift is subtle yet profound. You are no longer chasing life. You are magnetizing it. This is not mystical exaggeration. It is the ordinary miracle of living congruent with yourself. But embodiment is demanding. It will ask you to let go of excuses, to stop postponing your becoming, to move as if you already are what you seek. It will feel like leaping without a net, yet you will find the net was woven of your own trust. To live from coherence is to risk being misunderstood by those who still measure life in appearances. But it is also to join the quiet lineage of souls who, across centuries, have become living transmissions of wholeness. When you embody your knowing, you no longer ask the world for permission. You walk differently, as if the ground itself honors your feet. You speak differently, your words carrying weight even in silence. People feel it around you, though they may not name it. You become what Jung called a symbol of the self, not perfect, not finished, but radiant with the authority of alignment. This is the work now, to practice coherence until it is no longer practice, but presence. To let your heart become the metronome of your becoming. To let every breath be a vow. I will live as if the self is already enthroned within me. Which truth in this story touched your soul the most? The narrow gate of becoming. There is a moment when the path narrows, when delay is no longer possible. You feel it now, like a doorway closing behind you as another begins to open ahead. Time itself seems to lean forward, asking you to choose. Not in fear, but in truth. Not because life will punish you if you turn away, but because your own soul will not let you remain in the half-light any longer. Every myth remembers this moment. The pilgrim at the river's edge, the disciple in the garden, the wanderer before the mountain. To step through is to release not only what is false, but also what is familiar. It is to admit that you can never again pretend you did not know. And so the threshold feels heavy, not because it is cruel, but because it requires you to carry only what is essential. The rest must fall away. You feel the pressure of the narrowing. Old identities that once sheltered you now crumble in your hands. Beliefs you inherited from family, culture, or fear no longer fit the shape of your lived experience. Roles you played to be loved begin to disintegrate under the weight of your authenticity. It hurts, yes, but the pain is not destruction. It is contraction before birth. Jung said every true transformation carries the taste of death, the death of an outgrown self. You are walking through that death now, but look closely. It is not the end of you. It is the end of your disguise. What remains is what was always indestructible, the self, luminous, ancient, whole. The gate is narrow, but not closed. To pass through, you do not need brilliance or certainty. You need willingness. You need the courage to live as if what your soul has whispered is more real than the shouting of the world. You need the humility to let go of control, to let the river carry you where your maps have not yet drawn a line. And as you step, the world shifts. The synchronicities intensify, not as curiosities, but as confirmations. People appear, some to challenge you, some to walk beside you. Dreams sharpen, carrying instruction. Even your body responds, breath deepening, senses heightening, heart widening, as if it too has been waiting for your yes. This is not only your passage. Every choice you make here ripples outward. Your coherence steadies the collective field. Your embodiment makes it easier for others to believe in their own. You become, without trying, a lighthouse, a transmission, a living symbol of what is possible when one person chooses truth over fear. Do not underestimate the weight of this, and do not underestimate its grace. The universe does not ask you to save the world. It asks you to live so fully aligned that the world remembers itself through you. The narrow gate is here. You are already at its threshold. The only question is whether you will step. Where on this inner path do you find yourself now?